Dr. Sarah Chen hadn't taken her pills in 4 days. She told herself it was an accident. The bottle sat on her kitchen counter back in Portland, 200 miles away. She'd driven up to the cabin in a hurry. Needed to get away. Needed silence. The medication made her feel flat, like living behind glass. Her therapist said that was better than the alternative. Sarah wasn't so sure anymore. The cabin belonged to her dead father. He'd died here 3 winters ago. Heart attack while chopping wood. The neighbors found him 2 weeks later, frozen solid, face down in the snow. Sarah had inherited his silence. She arrived on a Tuesday. The forecast promised snow, lots of it. She'd brought food for a week, books she wouldn't read, a journal she'd probably fill with lies. The first night was fine, quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like a gift. The second night, the snow started. By the third night, her car was buried. The road was gone. The world had turned white, pure and terrible and complete. That's when the counting started. It began small. She counted her footsteps from the bedroom to the kitchen. 17 steps, then back. 17 steps. If she miscounted, she had to start over. Her therapist had a name for this. Intrusive thoughts, compulsive behaviors, signs that the chemistry in her brain was sliding out of balance. Sarah knew what was happening. Knowledge didn't help. By day 4, she was counting everything. Logs in the fireplace, 6, cans in the pantry, 23, books on the shelf, 41, windows in the cabin, 8. The numbers kept her company. They were better than the silence, but they also kept changing. She'd count the books, get 41, turn around, count again, 42. She'd count the windows, 8, then 9, then 8 again, impossible things. But her eyes didn't lie, or did they? Sarah started making marks on paper, tracking her counts, proving to herself that she wasn't losing it. The marks didn't match. The numbers shifted like living things. On day 5, she counted the doors. 3 doors. Front door. Bedroom door. Bathroom door. She walked through the cabin, touched each door, counted out loud. 1, 2, 3. Then she turned around and saw the 4th door. It stood at the end of the hallway. Old wood. Black iron handle. She'd walked past that hallway 100 times. The wall had always been blank. Sarah's heart hammered. She closed her eyes, counted to 10, opened them. The door was still there. She knew what this was. Hallucinations. Her brain misfiring without the medication, creating things that couldn't exist. But knowing didn't make the door disappear. She walked toward it. Her hand touched the wood. Solid, real, cold as ice. The handle turned. Inside was another room. Small, empty, wooden floor, 1 window. Snow pressed against the glass like a living thing. And in the center of the room sat a chair. Someone was sitting in it. Sarah's breath stopped. The figure didn't move. Its back was to her. Long hair, dark coat, just sitting, staring at the snow. "Hello?" Sarah's voice cracked. The figure didn't respond. Sarah took 1 step into the room, then another. Her mind screamed at her to run, but she needed to know, needed to understand. She walked around the chair. The woman sitting there had Sarah's face. Not similar, identical. Same dark eyes, same scar on the chin from a childhood fall, same everything, but older, much older. Her face was lined with wrinkles. Her hair was white. Her eyes were hollow. "What are you?" Sarah whispered. The old woman smiled. Her teeth were black. "I'm what you become," she said, "when you stop counting." Sarah ran. She didn't remember crossing the room, didn't remember slamming the door. She found herself in the hallway, gasping, clawing at the walls. When she looked back, the door was gone. Just a blank wall. Sarah collapsed. She wanted to cry but couldn't. The tears were frozen inside her. She knew the truth now. The medication wasn't making her flat. It was keeping her real. Without it, she was coming apart. Her mind was creating rooms and doors and impossible women with her face. Soon she wouldn't know what was real at all. She had to get out. Sarah put on every layer she owned. 3 shirts, 2 sweaters, her father's old coat, boots, gloves, hat. She opened the front door. The snow was a wall, 6 feet high, maybe more. It had drifted against the cabin like a frozen ocean. She couldn't see the road, couldn't see the trees, just white, endless white. Sarah grabbed a shovel, started digging. The snow was heavy and wet. Each shovelful felt like lifting concrete. Her arms burned, her lungs screamed. She dug for an hour, made it maybe 6 feet forward. Behind her, the hole she'd dug was already filling back in. The snow was burying her faster than she could dig. Sarah dropped the shovel. She stood in the hole she'd made, surrounded by walls of white, buried alive in slow motion. She started to laugh. The sound was ugly and sharp. This was how her father died, buried in snow, frozen and alone. The thought should have scared her. Instead, it felt like comfort. She climbed back inside, locked the door, started counting again. 1, 2, 3, 4. The cabin had 5 doors now. Sarah opened the new one, another empty room, another chair, another version of herself. This one was younger, maybe 20. She was crying silently. Her wrists were bandaged. "I tried to stop it," the young Sarah said. "It didn't work." "Stop what?" Sarah asked. "This." The young woman gestured at everything. "At nothing." Sarah closed the door, counted again. 6 doors now. She opened them one by one. Behind each door was another room, another chair, another her. A child Sarah who wouldn't stop screaming. A teenage Sarah covered in scratches. A middle-aged Sarah who'd hung herself, but was still somehow sitting there, neck bent wrong, eyes open. Sarah understood now. These weren't hallucinations. They were versions of her that the medication had kept locked away. The parts of herself she'd been swallowing down for years. The fear, the pain, the urge to stop existing. Without the pills, they were escaping. She counted the doors again. 12, 20, 41. Too many to count. The cabin was bigger on the inside now. Impossible. Every wall sprouted new doors. Each one led to another her. Another moment of breaking. Sarah sat down in the center of the living room. The fire had gone out. The cold was seeping in. She could feel her mind fracturing, splitting into pieces, each piece opening a new door. The snow outside pressed against the windows. It was trying to get in, trying to bury everything. Sarah thought that might be better. If the snow filled the cabin, it would cover all the doors, freeze all her broken pieces in place, stop the splitting, stop the counting, stop everything. She lay down on the floor, closed her eyes, started counting one last time. 1, 2, 3. The numbers went on forever. When the neighbors found her in spring, Sarah was still breathing, barely. Hypothermia, severe dehydration, catatonic state. They asked her what happened. Why didn't she call for help? Why didn't she try to leave? Sarah just counted, over and over. She counted the doctors, the nurses, the ceiling tiles, the pills they made her take. She counted the doors in her hospital room. There was only one door. Everyone said so, but Sarah knew better. She could see the others, lining the walls, waiting. The medication kept them closed, kept them quiet. But Sarah knew the truth now. The doors were always there. The snow hadn't created them. It had just shown her what she'd been hiding from all along. Some people weren't meant to be alone. Their minds couldn't handle the silence. The counting never stopped, and the doors never really closed. They just waited. Sarah was still counting when they moved her to the long-term facility. She's counting still. Marcus hadn't heard another human voice in 19 days. He kept a tally on the wall, 19 marks, each one a small cut in the wood paneling. The knife felt good in his hand, sharp and certain. Everything else felt distant, like he was watching himself from far away. The radio tower job was supposed to be temporary, 6 weeks, good pay, solitude. Marcus needed both. His last breakdown happened at the grocery store. Too many people, too many voices. He'd started screaming, couldn't stop. They called the police, then the hospital, then his sister. She'd looked at him with those tired eyes, the eyes that said she was done saving him. "You need to figure this out, Marcus," she'd said. "I can't keep doing this." So he'd figured it out. He'd found a job where there were no people, no voices, no eyes watching him break apart. Just him and the tower and the endless white silence. The first week was perfect. Marcus climbed the tower each day, checked the equipment, made sure the signals stayed strong. The work was simple, mechanical. His mind could rest. The second week was harder. The silence started feeling thick, like something he could touch. It pressed against his ears, made them ring. He started talking to himself, just small things. "Coffee's ready. Time to check the tower. Cold today?" His voice sounded wrong, too loud, like it didn't belong to him. By week 3, Marcus stopped talking altogether. That's when he started hearing the other sounds. It began with the wind. It didn't just blow, it spoke. Marcus would stand outside, and the wind would whisper, not words exactly, but something close, syllables without meaning, breath without source. He told himself it was natural, wind through trees, through power lines, through the gaps in the cabin walls. But then he heard it inside. Marcus woke on day 20 to the sound of breathing. Not his breathing, someone else's, slow and steady, in and out, coming from the corner of the room. He turned on the light. Nothing there, just shadows and empty space. But the breathing continued. Marcus got out of bed, walked to the corner, put his hand in the space where the sound came from. Nothing, just cold air. He stood there for an hour, listening. The breathing never stopped, never changed rhythm. When dawn came, it faded. Marcus checked his medication. He'd been taking it, every day. Same time, same dose. But he knew what this was. He'd been here before. The sounds that didn't exist. The voices that only he could hear. His brain was broken. Had been since he was 17. The doctors said it was schizophrenia, auditory hallucinations, chemical imbalance. The pills helped, most of the time. But stress made it worse. Isolation made it worse. And Marcus was more isolated than he'd ever been. He tried to call his sister. The phone line was dead. The snow had taken it down 3 days ago. No one was coming to fix it. Not until the thaw. The radio worked, emergency band only. But Marcus would have to admit what was happening. Would have to say the words, "I'm hearing things that aren't real." They'd pull him off the mountain, put him back in the hospital, back in those rooms with locked doors and people who spoke in soft voices that made him feel like a child. He couldn't go back there. Marcus decided to wait it out. 4 more weeks, the pills would hold. They had to. But the sounds got worse. On day 21, he heard footsteps on the roof, heavy boots, walking back and forth, for hours. Marcus went outside. No footprints in the snow, no ladder against the cabin, no way for anyone to get up there. But he could still hear them, even standing in the snow, looking up at the empty roof. Walking, always walking. On day 23, he heard his name. Marcus. A woman's voice, soft, Familiar. Marcus, can you hear me? It was his mother's voice, but his mother had been dead for 6 years. Marcus, I'm cold. Let me in. He put his hands over his ears. It didn't help. The voice was inside his head. No amount of pressure could block it out. Please, Marcus, I've been walking for so long. I just need to rest. He knew it wasn't real, knew it completely, but part of him wanted to open the door anyway. That's what scared him most, not the voices, but how much he wanted to believe them. Marcus stopped sleeping. If he slept, he couldn't tell what was real. At least awake, he could try to hold on. He drank coffee until his hands shook, took double doses of his pills, counted the hours until dawn, then counted the hours until dusk. Time felt wrong now. Hours took days, days took minutes. On day 26, Marcus climbed the tower. He needed to check the equipment, needed to do his job, needed to prove he could still function. The wind was screaming, not speaking anymore, screaming. He climbed higher. The metal was ice under his gloves. His breath came in frozen clouds. Halfway up, he heard the voice again. Marcus, look at me. He turned. His mother stood in the snow below, wearing her funeral dress, the blue one. Her face was gray. Her eyes were holes. Come down, Marcus. We need to talk. He gripped the ladder, closed his eyes. You're not real, he said out loud. His voice was swallowed by the wind. I'm as real as you are, his mother said. Maybe more. Marcus looked down at his hands. They were shaking so hard he could barely hold on. Was he real? How could he know? The thought opened up like a pit beneath him. Maybe he was the hallucination. Maybe he'd never left the hospital. Maybe this whole mountain, this tower, this job, all of it was something his broken brain had invented. Come down, his mother said again. Let's go inside. You must be freezing. Marcus wanted to. God, he wanted to. He started climbing down, 1 rung, 2 rungs, 3. His mother smiled. Her teeth were black ice. Good boy, she said. Just a little further. Marcus stopped. He remembered something his therapist once said. When you can't tell what's real, follow the rules. The rules are real. Rule 1, his mother was dead. Rule 2, dead people don't stand in the snow. Rule 3, if something breaks the rules, it isn't real. Marcus climbed back up. His mother's face changed. The smile became something else, something angry and hungry. You can't hide up there forever, she said. I know, Marcus said, but he could hide for today. He reached the top of the tower. The wind tried to tear him off. He held on. From up here, he could see for miles. Nothing but white. No roads, no houses, no people. He was completely alone. The realization should have terrified him. Instead, it felt like clarity. The voices weren't real, but they would keep coming. They always did. Marcus could call for help, could admit he was breaking down, could let them take him off this mountain, or he could stay. Let the voices multiply. Let them fill the silence. Let his mind create a whole world of impossible things. Eventually, he wouldn't be able to tell the difference anymore. Real and unreal would blend together. He'd be lost completely, but maybe that was okay. Maybe being lost was better than being found, better than more hospitals, more medication adjustments, more people looking at him with tired eyes. Marcus climbed down. His mother was gone, but he could hear her inside the cabin, humming, making dinner sounds, pretending to be alive. He stood in the snow. The cold bit through his clothes. His fingers were going numb. He could walk, just start walking, into the white. The snow would take him eventually, clean and simple and quiet. Or he could go inside, sit across from his dead mother, pretend she was real. Both options felt the same. Marcus walked to the cabin, put his hand on the door. Inside, the humming stopped. "I'm making your favorite," his mother's voice said. "Pot roast, like when you were little." Marcus opened the door. The cabin was empty. No mother, no pot roast, just shadows and cold. But he could smell it, could hear the sounds of cooking, could almost see her standing by the stove. His mind was being kind, giving him company, filling the silence with familiar ghosts. Marcus sat at the table, closed his eyes. "Thanks, Mom," he said to the empty room. Something that wasn't there touched his shoulder. "You're welcome, baby," the voice said. Marcus stayed on the mountain for the full 6 weeks. When the replacement crew arrived, they found him sitting at the table, talking to someone who wasn't there, setting 2 plates for dinner, laughing at jokes no one else could hear. He didn't recognize the crew, didn't seem to see them at all. They took him down the mountain, back to the hospital, back to the locked doors. Marcus didn't fight. He was still having dinner with his mother, still warm and safe and not alone. The doctors said he'd had a complete psychotic break. That isolation had destroyed what little stability he had left. But Marcus knew the truth. He hadn't broken. He'd just stopped fighting. And in the silence, in the cold, in the endless white nothing, he'd finally found peace. Even if it wasn't real, especially because it wasn't real. Emma was 8 days into her artist's retreat when she realized she'd forgotten how to form words. Not forgotten exactly. She knew the mechanics: tongue, teeth, breath, sound. But when she tried to speak, nothing came out. Just air, empty and meaningless. She stood in front of the bathroom mirror, opened her mouth, tried to say her own name. "Emma." Her lips moved, but no sound emerged. Emma touched her throat, felt the muscles working, felt the vibration, but the sound stopped somewhere between intention and reality. She wasn't surprised. This was the 3rd time it had happened. The first time was after her divorce. She'd woken up mute. 3 weeks of silence before the words came back. The second time was after her gallery show failed. 2 weeks that time. Her therapist called it selective mutism, a trauma response, her body's way of shutting down when the world became too much. But Emma knew it was something else, something deeper. The words weren't gone. They were just hiding, waiting for her to become quiet enough to hear them. That's why she'd come to the cabin, 3 weeks alone in the mountains. No phone, no internet, no people. Just her and the canvas and the silence. She was supposed to paint. That was the point. Create something meaningful, something that would prove she still had value. But the canvas stayed blank. 8 days, and she hadn't made a single mark. Instead, she'd been listening. The cabin creaked at night, old wood settling, wind pressing against walls. Normal sounds. But Emma heard conversations in them. The wind didn't just blow, it questioned. "Why are you here? What are you hiding from? When did you become so empty?" The walls didn't just creak, they judged. "You're wasting time. You have no talent. Everyone knows you're a fraud." Emma tried to paint the voices, tried to put them on canvas. Maybe that would make them stop. But her hands wouldn't cooperate. They shook too badly. The brush felt wrong, heavy and foreign. She'd been taking her anxiety medication every morning, same dose she'd taken for 5 years, but it wasn't working anymore. Or maybe the silence was stronger than the pills. On day 9, Emma noticed the handprints. They appeared on the windows, small prints, child-sized, pressed against the glass from the outside. She went out to look. No footprints in the snow, no way for anyone to reach the windows. They were 6 feet off the ground. But the prints were there. Dozens of them, all over every window. Emma tried to wipe them away. They wouldn't come off. The glass was clean. The prints weren't on the surface. They were inside the glass, trapped between molecules. Impossible. She closed the curtains, tried not to look. but she could feel the prints, could sense small hands pressing, trying to get in or trying to get out. That night, Emma heard crying, not outside, inside, coming from the bedroom closet. A child's cry, high and desperate, the sound of someone who'd been crying for hours, for days, for years. Emma knew she shouldn't open the closet, knew what she'd find. Nothing. Empty space. Proof that her mind was creating things that couldn't exist. But the crying didn't stop. It got louder, more desperate. Finally, Emma opened the door. A little girl sat inside, huddled in the corner, knees pulled to her chest. She had Emma's face, but younger, maybe 6 years old. The girl looked up. Her eyes were red from crying. "Why did you leave me here?" she asked. Emma couldn't answer. Her voice was still gone. "You said you'd come back," the girl continued. "You promised." Emma shook her head. She'd never made that promise. She didn't know this child. But that wasn't true. She did know her. This was the Emma who still believed in things, who thought she had something to say, who painted because it felt like breathing. Emma had locked her away years ago, after the divorce, after the failure, after every time someone looked at her work and said, "It's nice, but..." She'd buried that version of herself. The hopeful one, the vulnerable one. Because hope hurt and vulnerability killed. "I'm sorry," Emma tried to say, but no sound came. The little girl stood up, walked out of the closet. She was transparent, like she was made of ice and light. "You can't talk because you have nothing to say anymore," the girl said. "You gave up. You stopped trying." Emma wanted to argue, wanted to explain, but the girl was right. She'd stopped believing she had value, stopped trusting her own voice, stopped making anything real. The little girl walked to the blank canvas, put her small, transparent hand on it. "You used to know how to see," she said. "Colors, shapes, stories. You saw the world differently than everyone else. That was your gift." Emma remembered. She used to paint what she felt, not what she saw. Used to translate emotion into color, pain into texture, joy into light. But somewhere along the way, she'd started painting what people wanted, what would sell, what would get approval. And then she couldn't paint at all. "I don't know how to get it back," Emma tried to say. The words stayed trapped in her chest. The little girl looked at her. "Yes, you do. You just have to stop being afraid." Then she walked toward the wall, pressed her hand against it, and disappeared into the wood. Emma was alone again. She looked at the canvas, still blank, still waiting. Her hands were still shaking, but she picked up the brush anyway. She didn't plan what to paint, didn't think about composition or color theory or what anyone would think. She just moved the brush, let her hand follow instinct instead of fear. Red, dark, and angry, spreading across white, blue, cold and deep, drowning the red, black, heavy, pressing down, suffocating everything. Emma painted for hours. Her hands never stopped shaking, but they moved anyway, creating something that looked like chaos, like breaking, like the inside of her mind. When she finally stopped, the sun was rising. The canvas was covered, not with anything beautiful, but with something true. Emma looked at it, felt something crack in her chest. She started to cry. The tears came in waves, huge and violent, years of held-back grief pouring out, and with the tears came sound. "I'm sorry," she said out loud. Her voice was rough, but real. "I'm so sorry." She didn't know who she was apologizing to. The little girl, herself, everyone she'd ever disappointed, maybe all of them. Emma painted for 3 more days, filled canvas after canvas with color and chaos and truth. Not beautiful things, not sellable things, just honest things. The voices didn't stop. The walls still whispered. The wind still questioned. But Emma stopped listening to them, started listening to something deeper, something that came from inside instead of outside. On day 12, she tried to leave. The snow had stopped. The road was clear enough. She could drive down the mountain, go back to her life, her apartment, her empty studio. But when Emma packed her car, she couldn't make herself leave. Not yet. She went back inside, looked at the paintings, looked at what she'd created. They were terrible in some ways, messy, uncontrolled, nothing like her old work. But they were hers, completely and honestly hers. Emma unpacked, decided to stay the full 3 weeks. She painted every day, stopped trying to make sense, stopped trying to be good, just made marks, just used color, just let her hands move without her brain interfering. The little girl appeared sometimes, watched from corners, never spoke again, just watched with those sad, knowing eyes. The handprints on the windows multiplied, filled every inch of glass. Emma stopped covering them, stopped being afraid of what her mind created. These were parts of her, the broken parts, the parts she'd tried to silence. They deserved to exist too. On day 20, Emma's voice fully returned. She could speak normally, form complete sentences, but she chose not to most of the time. The silence felt better, cleaner, like the space between thoughts where truth lived. She left the cabin on day 21, 1 day early, not because she was running, but because she was ready. Emma loaded 15 paintings into her car, drove down the mountain, went home. She didn't show the paintings to anyone, didn't try to sell them, didn't seek approval or validation. She hung them in her apartment, looked at them every day, reminders of what happened when she stopped pretending, when she let herself break instead of holding everything together. People asked about her retreat, how it went, if she'd accomplished what she set out to do. Emma said it was fine, said she'd needed the quiet. She didn't mention the voices, the handprints, the little girl made of ice and light. She didn't mention that she'd lost her voice for 13 days, that she'd painted her breakdown onto canvas, that she'd learned to stop listening to the world and start listening to herself. Some things couldn't be explained, shouldn't be explained. Some things only made sense in the silence. Emma still took her medication, still saw her therapist, still had bad days where the world felt too loud and her voice felt too small. But she kept painting, not for shows, not for sales, just for herself. And sometimes, late at night, she heard the little girl crying in her closet. Emma didn't open the door anymore, didn't need to. She just said, "I know you're there. I haven't forgotten you." And the crying would stop, not because the girl was gone, but because she'd been heard. That was all she'd ever wanted, to be heard, to be seen, to be allowed to exist. Emma understood that now, understood that her breakdown wasn't a failure. It was her mind's way of forcing her to listen, to stop running, to stop hiding. The winter had broken her, but it had also shown her what lived beneath the breaking. Something real, something honest, something worth saving, even if no one else ever saw it, even if she never spoke of it again. Emma knew, and that was enough. The silence had taught her that. In the cold, in the isolation, in the weight of endless white nothing. Sometimes you had to lose yourself completely to find out what was actually worth keeping.